very first advisory committee going, if we could have the agenda being brought down and perhaps start with a roll call just to make sure we have quorum to get this kicked off.
And I'll begin the roll call. The State Chief Information Officer and Director, California Department of Technology, Amy Tong.
Here.
President of the California Public Utilities Commission, Maribel Badger.
This is Robert Osborne from PUC. President Batcher and Commissioner Guzman Aceves will be a little late to the meeting, so I'm here to represent the PUC until then.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Chief Deputy Director, Department of Finance, Gail Miller.
Here.
And the designee for Director Michigan from the Director, who's the Director of Department of Transportation, Mike Keever.
I'm here.
And then Secretary of the Government Operations Agency, Yolanda Richardson.
Here.
And then Senator Lena Gonzalez.
Here.
Senator Mike Mcguire.
Mark McGuire is a much better baseball player, and I'm here.
I apologize. I'm an A's fan. I apologize, Senator.
Well, I apologize. You're an A's fan. It's all about the Giants, but it's all good.
Oh boy, what did I start? Okay,
Yeah.
let's move on. Assembly Member Sharon Quirk Silva. I believe I saw Assembly Member Sharon Quirk Silva. Oh, I see you.
Here,
okay.
here.
Okay, there you are. Okay, I just couldn't hear. I apologize. And
Okay.
Assembly Member Jim Wood. I did see him earlier. Assembly Member Jim Wood. Okay. Well,
All right.
I did see him earlier. In regards, we do have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Michael. Thank you everyone for joining this very first meeting for the Middle Mile Advisory Committee. It's a pleasure of mine to help kick this off and also be the chair of this committee moving forward. In a couple of minutes, we're going to open it up and ask each of the member to do a very brief self-intro on any few opening remarks like to say, because we wanted to make sure this is an opportunity not only for the members to make sure that they have a platform to provide directions and advice to a staff, who you're going to hear from, a team of staff who have already started working hard since the statute was in place on July 19th. Today is an exciting day, as I mentioned, that we get to kick off this very, very important effort as part of the fabric in California to continue down the road of bringing broadband for all to the state of California. And where this particular work fits in, you're also going to hear more from a staff report, because this is one of the many initiatives that's going on, but as I would have to say, perhaps a little biased, probably one of the most important and historic work in the investment of broadband. In addition to this, just a little bit of a context setting. I'm sure all of you have known that there is a California Broadband Council, which continue to oversee the overall broadband ecosystem, including area and focus on adoption, digital literacy. There's ECTAG, there's emergency response and connectivity to school. It is also a public platform under the Beckley-King for information sharing and gathering input from the council members. Then there was an executive order issued back in August of 2020 to make broadband for all as an urgent priority for the administration. As part of that executive order, a broadband for all action plan was specifically called out as a task to be delivered by the end of 2020, which the action plan laid out a roadmap with input from multiple agency and stakeholders from the community to provide what is needed in the broadband for all under the 3 guiding principles. Create access and high performance broadband at home, school, libraries, and business everywhere in the state. Make available, affordable broadband and devices necessary to access internet. provide avenues for training and support and enable digital inclusion. And that particular broadband action plan is also posted. And from there, making a specific connection to this particular very important middle mile initiative with the support from the legislature and the huge budget investment from the 2020 budget with the combination of SB 156 builds the need and then identified by the action plan to have this particular middle mile infrastructure gap to be closed through this effort. And we are today meeting for the very first time the advisory committee that was also called out and established by the statute to be formed by a 9-member committee. And I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to get this started. Lastly, I wanted to also point out the fact that through the statute, there was a specific call out to have a deputy director of broadband to be the single point of contact to coordinate, to communicate, as well as to report out things that are specific to Middle Mile Initiative. So the Deputy Director of Office of Broadband and Digital Literacy within the Department of Technologies, Scott Adams, who was appointed earlier, has a dedicated focus to do that. A final reminder that this meeting of the Middle Mile Advisory Committee is under Bagley-Keene, which established by statute, and therefore we need to comply with the Bagley-Keene Public Meeting Act. Later on the agenda, you will hear from the executive report from staff, reviewing guiding principles that are recommended by staff for the Middle Mile Initiative, information briefing from multiple entities on the progress that they have made thus far. At each section of the agenda, there will be opportunities for members to ask questions and comment. And lastly, the agenda for the future meetings will include input from a committee member. As you all know, that this very first meeting needed to happen right before the 30 days of the signature of the statute. And that therefore we needed to schedule on this day and with a 10-day posting of the agenda prior to it. But as we continue to move forward, and now that a committee is formed, a coordination effort will be much tighter in obtaining feedback from the members on agenda item. So with that said, I'd like to go ahead and open up for the committee members, and perhaps we'll just go down the same order that roll call was made to do a quick self-introductory, and if there's any opening remark you'd like to say. So I'm going to go ahead and call the members, starting with, not in any particular order. Let's start with the Chief Deputy of Finance, Chief Deputy Miller.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much, Amy, for that introduction. I am Gail Miller. I'm at the Department of Finance and grateful that you all made the time to be here today. And this is, it's obviously part of the governor's commitment to, as Amy said, to broadband and to really creating an infrastructure that will live on in the state for a long time in terms of providing open access and an opportunity to connect folks that haven't been connected before, and also to increase competition in our state and make sure that there are a lot of options available. So I know that we are, I do want to a little bit, just because I sit here and then and there's a legislative process as well. I do just kind of want to, from the offset, say that this committee does not have jurisdiction over legislation, and just the distinction between an advisory committee and what will be eventually pieces of legislation won't necessarily come together here. So I do want to make that clear, just in terms of oversight and administration is different and apart from the legislative process. So I thought that, Amy, I hope that's okay, but I thought that was an important distinction.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Gail.
Next,
if I could, thank you. Next, if I could go to Secretary Yolanda Richardson.
Thank you, Amy. It's great to be here and be a part of what you said, which is unprecedented work around this particular issue. And as you know, just a very soft spot for us here at GovOps in terms of equity and equal access for all, especially around our children and education and the things that broadband will be able to do to, I think, broaden the horizons of so many Californians that are up and coming. So I'm excited to have the opportunity to sit here amongst the esteemed other committee members, and just thank you for having me.
Thank you, Secretary. Rob, I don't know if you want to jump in or we wait till President Badger joins and we have her introduced at that point.
Thank you, Amy. I could just say a few words if she hasn't joined already. I'm Rob Osborne, Director of the Communications Division at the California Public Utilities Commission. And as you probably know, the PUC manages several broadband programs. One is the California Teleconnect, which helps schools and libraries and nonprofits, and the other is the California Advanced Services Fund. The passage of this broadband budget goes far beyond that and has the potential to fundamentally change how essential communication services, now powered by broadband connections, are delivered to Californians in tribal, rural, and urban areas. I'm very excited to work with the Department of Technology, Caltrans, and other agencies included in the Broadband Action Plan to be part of this historic effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. And next let's go to Chief Deputy Keever, representing Department of Transportation.
Yeah, thank you, Director Thompson. Mike Keever, Deputy Director for Caltrans. Director Omashakin would like to be here, but he's speaking right now at the California Transportation Commission meeting. I think it's been stated very well already, the benefits of the program. So for Caltrans, we're certainly pleased to be participating in this important initiative. And for us, this is also good transportation policy. So anytime there can be digital substitution of trips, that's good for best use of the very highly used state transportation system that we have here. We earlier talked about the economics, and it also helps us with our climate and greenhouse gas goals. So we're very anxious to work with all of you and get started. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'd love to hear from our members. So let's start with Senator Gonzalez.
Sure, thank you very much. And thank you for having me. I'm just really excited to be here with everyone. I'm Senator Gonzalez, representing the 33rd Senate District, which includes my hometown of Long Beach and Southeast Los Angeles and a portion of South Los Angeles. I'm also the chair of transportation and the author of SB4, which is the Broadband for All Act. But I want to thank everyone for being a part of this. It's been very, very important to the Senate and to my colleagues that are here with us today. But I look forward to really good work with you all. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And now let's move to what would have been our baseball star, Senator Mcguire.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Grateful to be with you, and good afternoon. Really appreciate the opportunity to be able to be with you. I want to say thank you to Senator Gonzalez for her leadership, Assemblymember Wood, who I have the pleasure to be able to serve with on the North Coast, as well as Assemblymember Quirk Silva for their tenacity in moving this critical issue forward along with each of you. I think that we can all agree that this $6 billion represents one of the most critical public infrastructure projects in the Golden State's history. And we also know that there are too many Californians on the wrong side of the digital divide in all corners of this state, rural and urban. And we know that there is also still work to do in that legislative process, which we're looking forward to engaging with both the administration and the assembly to be able to come up with a final deal that will connect millions of Californians. And I also can say that Senator Gonzalez and I look forward to be able to bring this project forward, getting it built in an expedited manner, and getting millions of unserved and underserved Californians connected as soon as possible. Last thing I'd like to be able to say, Madam Chair, is we want to say thank you to Gail Miller from the administration as well, who's been fabulous to work with on the legislative side. And again, we look forward to the continued work together.
A standing echo on the appreciation to Gail. All right, let's move to, thank you so much for that, Senator Mcguire, and let's hear from Assemblymember Corsova.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be part of this working group. And without saying too much, I would just say that as a classroom teacher for 30 years, we were all stunned when we saw those images of the two young sisters sitting at a Taco Bell. And I think that picture really speaks 1,000 words. And I'm a firm believer in equity, meaning that we may not be able to equally put broadband in every single place, but we know that there's some places that don't even have the very beginnings of the infrastructure. And so we need to focus on making sure that we can get to those communities as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have Assembly Member Wood to help wrap up the introduction?
You do. Unfortunately, here in the Capitol, I had technical difficulties getting on. So apparently, broadband access or access to the internet is not necessarily a rural issue. But very excited to be a part of this group, and it is a great group put together. Senator Mcguire and I represent essentially the same parts of. He has a bigger district, but we represent essentially a large rural area that has struggled with access for many years. And so this is a very exciting opportunity for us. I see myself as a little bit of a disruptor, someone who wants to make sure we keep people's feet to the fire and then we actually get this done, because this is a time sensitive and we have a finite amount of time to do this. So the way we work in the past on things shouldn't necessarily dictate how we work now. The better we work together, we're all at the same table and working to get this done as quickly as possible, the better it's going to be for California. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right, with that, without further ado, let's keep moving on the agenda. And I believe, Scott, if you are up next to provide an executive briefing. Scott, if you're speaking, you might.
There you go. Thank you, Director Tong and members of the Middle Mile Advisory Committee. For all the reasons you said, it's just an absolute pleasure to be working with all of you on this very significant project. Today's executive report is really going to focus on the progress we've made in the last 30 days since SB 156 was signed and enacted. We're going to give you a brief overview of the broadband office, what the department and the broadband office's responsibilities are, how we're leveraging resources and partnerships, and then at a very high level go over our leadership, our working group, and our work streams moving forward. So in the interest of time and to save room for comments, just wanted to real briefly, as Director Tong had mentioned, just sort of focus on where the Office of Broadband and Digital Literacy sits in the ecosystem. We manage at a statewide level the interactions between the stakeholders within the ecosystem dedicated to closing the digital divide. Given Director Tong's chairpersonship over the Broadband Council, we monitor and support the work of that 12-member body, which includes 9 state agencies and departments, the California Emerging Technology Fund, and representatives from the Assembly and Senate. That work was really informed by and expanded in response to COVID and the pandemic, when the governor enacted his broadband executive order, and then further articulated in the Broadband for All Action Plan that, as Director Tom indicated, includes 24 very specific items that various state agencies and stakeholders work on, elements of the whole broadband equation, from data and mapping to funding to broadband adoption, broadband deployment, and digital literacy. And then recently with the budget in SB 156, our responsibilities have expanded to include the statewide open access middle mile network. Just real briefly, as far as SB 156's concern, it did direct the Department of Technology and the Office of Broadband to oversee the acquisition and management of contracts for the development, acquisition, construction, maintenance, and operation of the statewide open access middle mile broadband network. It established the Deputy Director of Broadband as the main point of contact for that effort. It directed our office and the department to retain a third-party administrator to oversee the implementation and management of the middle mile network, and to create this body here, to which we will interact with monthly to monitor the progress of the project and provide policy advice. What we really want you to know is that the Broadband Office and the Department of Technology are leveraging our executive leadership and their teams to provide support on critical elements of the middle mile network. Leanna Bailey-Crimmins, who is the Department of Technology's State Chief Technology Officer, is a critical partner on this effort, specifically as it relates to the technical and engineering aspects. Leanna, could you please say something and wave your hands just so folks can see who you are?
Yes, thank you, Scott, so much, and Director Tong and the Broadband Advisory Committee. Leanna Bailey-Crimmins, State Chief Technology Officer. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be a part of this historic broadband initiative, and I look forward to continuing to partner with our sister agencies and departments and a third-party administrator to make this all happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Leanna. Next, I'd like to point out Miles Burnett, who is the Department of Technology's Chief Administrative Officer. He and his team are really critical partners with us in establishing contracts with various entities. Miles, could you please say a few words and introduce yourself to the committee?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miles Burnett, as Chief Administrative Officer for the California Department of Technology. I want to say I'm very excited to be part of this project. It's pretty special with during a state career when it can intersect with a project of this importance and magnitude. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Miles. Also wanted to just point out that the Department of Finance is a really critical partner with the Department of Technology and the Broadband Office in terms of oversight of the budget and financial reporting, which is going to be really critical given the funding mechanism for this project. Next, real quickly, wanted to kind of lay out for folks the Broadband Middle Mile Initiative, as we call it, the three kind of leadership branches. You've got yourselves, the Middle Mile Advisory Committee, that, as we said, we're going to meet monthly and report to you. You monitor status and provide policy advice. We've got the Business Partner Working Group, which consists of staff from the Department of Technology, Department of Finance, Caltrans, the Public Utilities Commission, and when retained, the third-party administrator. And then on, program oversight and state and local fiscal recovery funds, the Department of Technology is working closely with the Department of Finance. So a little bit about our working group. The four main entities thus far are the Department of Technology, Finance, the PUC, and Caltrans. As I indicated, Department of Technology's responsibilities are really around program and fund management, reporting and oversight, acquiring and overseeing the third-party administrator, and then in collaboration with the third-party administrator and CPUC, facilitate high-speed broadband access through the last mile connectivity. The Department of Finance, again, budget oversight and facilitation and federal reporting. The PUC specifically providing data to identify unserved and underserved areas, to facilitate the initial formal public comment process on the middle mile network, which we'll hear about later on, and then to recommend network placement. And then Caltrans's role is a critical partner in leveraging existing transportation projects and overseeing the acquisition and management of construction contracts for the open access middle mile network. Real briefly, just wanted to give you a sense of how we've organized our work to the overall project management. We've divided into 8 specific work streams. We've got a program management and oversight, advisory committee support, a communications work stream, external affairs, agreements and contracts, data and mapping, design and engineering, and then build and expand the middle mile. And just wanted to touch real briefly, Director Tong, it has only been 30 days, but we have all, the partners in the working group have been collaborating. Some of the major accomplishments were the establishment of this committee, getting this meeting on the books and putting up a supporting webpage, developing some initial guiding principles that we'll speak to in the next segment, working on interagency agreements with Caltrans and CPUC, which are near completion to really shape how our agencies work together on this. We've made significant progress in the process to retain the third-party administrator, and also on some initial and preliminary data and mapping collaboration. And so, Director Tong, I am gonna stop sharing and turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Scott, for that update. I wanted to open up to committee members for any questions or comments. We have no questions and comments. Okay, going once, going twice. Okay, let's keep moving to get ready for the next agenda item. And I actually see Commissioner Guzman-Aceves is here. Does that mean also President Badger is here?
Unfortunately, President Badger is still caught up in our previous session.
Okay, no problem. Do you want to, are you standing in as an alternate at the moment? If so, do you want to just do a quick intro and then any opening comments as a committee member?
Sure, just a pleasure to be here. Extremely excited about this venture, working together and really making a permanent change really to the dynamics that we have before us today. I know that Director Osborne went through some points already, so I look forward to the rest of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. All right, last chance for any questions or comments from the committee member on this particular executive update. Yes, Assemblymember Wood, go for it.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Director Tong. Just kind of a question for Scott. We see four entities here, which in my mind a little bit is almost like 4 silos. So how do you envision this to work? We envision a coordinated effort. That's what I would be hoping, is that we're all at the table, all these groups are at the table all the time together, rather than off doing whatever. I think it's important in the project that we are able to see, that everyone is able to see what everyone else is doing so that we can measure progress. So how do you envision that, Mr. Adams?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember Wood. And what we were hoping to share and visualize with you on the slides is what we've already implemented in terms of coordination and collaboration. So when we reference the working group, so the 4 agencies meet on a weekly basis to collaborate and discuss all the progress that's been made, identify action items that correspond to the individual work streams, and then have a delegated staff within those that are collaborating on a regular basis in between those weekly work group meetings. So for instance, you'll hear later today on the information items we have, we're working almost daily with the Department of Finance on the federal the federal report that we have to turn in at the end of the month. On the data and mapping, we are coordinating with PUC, Caltrans, to do some initial data sharing, harmonization and analysis, et cetera. So like I said, we get together and have a very structured agenda in those work group meetings. And then the individual work streams are doing work in between those.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
With that, any other questions or comment from the advisory committee members? All right, if not, let's move on to the next topic. In order to really, for this committee and, to provide directions and guidance and just input to a very large working group, as you can see, is already starting. The staff have actually recommended a guiding principle, or I should say a set of guiding principles to be adopted by the advisory committee today. Just a reminder that the advisory committee, we're going to try to, based on this adoption, on a consensus rather than a vote, because I think it's important that we have a clear direction that is provided to staff, knowing that these guiding principles that we might be starting and what is needed at this phase. And as the initiative evolves over multiple years, those guiding principles would change, and it would also be updated to reflect the phase of the initiative. So giving that, Scott, and if you're ready, then let's go ahead and present.
Got it. Thank you, Director Tong. Sorry, folks. So as Director Tong said, that given the size, scale, ambition, and impact of this project, also some of the statutory and funding deadlines, these guidelines were really developed to guide working group decisions and stay true to the project purpose. The guidelines, currently, there are 3 guiding principles. The first is to provide affordable open access middle mile broadband infrastructure to enable last mile network connectivity throughout the state. The second one is to build the network expeditiously, leveraging existing infrastructure, networks, and construction projects where feasible. And the third is to prioritize connectivity to unserved and underserved communities, including community institutions. And so, Director Tong, I can leave these up or take them down, but I will pass it back to you for discussion with the members or any comments.
Let's go ahead and leave these up. So members, this is really an area that, a good guiding principle could go a long way in providing that guardrail and aspiration and direction to the working team. So I'd love to hear from you all on any comments and feedback. Feel free to chime in, or if you want to do a hand raise, either way.
Amy, I think it's important for us to just remember who we're here to serve, and remembering that the underserved communities is at the forefront, I think is very important. So good to see that in the guiding principles.
Thank you, Secretary Richardson. Any other feedback or suggestions?
Director Tong, this is Mike Heaver. One question regarding number 3. So that we're building the middle mile broadband infrastructure, and the final connectivity, often referred to as last mile, will come from others outside the scope of this project. Just wanted to fully understand the role that we see in ensuring that we reach the unserved and underserved communities with this middle mile backbone.
That's a good call out, right? Because even though the focus is the middle mile here, the ultimate goal here is to making sure those service, the connectivity are actually reached to the residents. So I wanted, that could be an area that makes sure people understand that, you know, only building the middle mile is not going to get us there. So that it needs to be a holistic view, making sure the objective is met, not just the mechanism are being met.
Yeah, Director Tong, can I just make a comment on that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. But I just want to sort of be clear about the role of the Middle Mile Advisory Committee is this idea of the building. And then obviously the jurisdiction of the last mile and the CASF program at least remains within the PUC's jurisdiction. And then, of course, as we know, and I know a lot of the provider partners, the ISPs and the cable companies will continue to work with us to provide last mile to the consumers. So it's a little bit of a nuanced question because this is a shared jurisdiction, but the goal of this advisory group is to hold the state accountable and make sure that we have a strong middle mile network, which will include, and I think to your point, Mr. Keever, it will include not only the building that you'll be doing, but it will include these long-term indefeasible rights of use leases that will also provide some of this open access. So I hope that answers your question in terms of where the jurisdiction lays. This will remain a partnership among various state departments.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Any other questions or dialogue about these guiding principles?
Amy, this is Michael. There's a question from Terry Loftus asking about, is there a definition for community institutions?
We're probably going to address that during the public comment period. I wanted to make sure we have this time reserved for the committee member, and
Okay.
yes, we will keep that question in mind as it comes up in the public comment. Thank you for that. Okay. All right. If maybe I'll ask for a more of a consensus. Are there any objection for the fact that these guiding principles are being adopted as is, unless you want the team to make additional edits based on feedback today, because it's important to get them started with something, and we can continue to evolve. If there are no major objection from the committee, we're going to go ahead and have the team to go ahead and proceed with these principles. We're okay with that? Okay. I'm not hearing any major objections or concerns at the moment. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and keep moving with the information items. Scott, I think you are facilitating that even though you're not the sole speaker, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Great. So I'd like to call on Ted Ryan from the Department of Finance to provide a brief status update on our the August 2021 SLFRF report that's due.
Thank you, Scott. This is Ted Ryan. I'm a budget analyst with the Department of Finance, and I'm providing a brief update on the state fiscal recovery funds reporting requirements for the federal government. Finance is currently in the process of compiling statewide information for 2 reports due to the federal government on August 31st. The first of those being a recovery plan performance report, and the second is an interim report, which just covers obligations and expenditures through July 31st, 2021. The information that CDT and CPUC submitted to Finance for inclusion in the first report is currently under review. And generally, the information submitted pertains to high-level project descriptions and expected outcomes and outputs to measure the state's progress and success. Finance is still reviewing these draft reports, and the data will be shared in coordination with the rest of the state's reporting on its use of these federal funds. And the data in these reports will be refined over time as the state's projects and programs are further developed. And just to give a sense in terms of the availability of the timeline for the availability of funds, federal law currently requires the state to obligate its state fiscal recovery funds by December 2024 and to expend those funds by December 2026. Finance will be working with departments involved in this effort to both make rapid progress on this project and to assess overall implementation progress so that funds are expended in a timely manner. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Ted. Appreciate your work and support on that. Next, we're going to hear from Rob Osborne at the Public Utilities Commission and Elizabeth Dewar of the Department of Transportation Caltrans to provide an update on some of the preliminary joint data and mapping efforts. Rob?
Before Rob and Elizabeth jump in, I just wanted to also call out right after this section of the agenda, we're going to open up for public comments. And so if anybody plan to make a public comment, go ahead and put your name in the chat. And so our moderator can go ahead and log those. Go ahead.
Thank you, Scott. I have a couple slides, if you wouldn't mind putting those up. Or would you like me to put them up?
Rob, why don't you go ahead and put them up if it's convenient for you.
Okay. All right, can everyone see the map slide?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to provide a brief overview of what we're doing at the PUC in conjunction with California Department of Technology and Caltrans in the middle mile mapping. So what we have here, you probably have seen this before. If you haven't, briefly what this is the yellow dots indicate census designated places across the state that have unserved households. And what the team did in putting this together was essentially connect all the last mile unserved household communities to a middle mile network. So this middle mile network is utilizing the state rights of way that's publicly available on the Caltrans map. And this was using the unserved definition of 100 megabits per second down. So anything below that was treated as unserved. And this was essentially the blueprint that we used in putting together the broadband plan for the middle mile. And so we are meeting regularly now with Department of Technology and Caltrans at the GIS level weekly to discuss sharing of data. We've actually already set up a sandbox for sharing data and moving forward on that. I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth Dewar from Caltrans to say a few words about the Caltrans side.
Thank you, Rob. So as Rob mentioned, we are working closely with CDT and CDT ourselves to talk and PUC about mapping of these locations. So CPUC has identified the broadband middle mile locations. And with this information, Caltrans has researched it and identified transportation projects that overlap with the middle mile locations. And we're looking at which broadband scope can be added to these projects at various project delivery phases. This was discussed a little bit earlier today. Caltrans is working with our districts to further assess the viability of these projects so that we can expedite the deployment of this middle mile network. We're also discussing the planning of standalone broadband projects, as we know that not all of our projects overlap with these locations of the broadband middle mile. So CDT, PUC, and Caltrans are collaborating, as Rob shared, in a shared workspace so that we can harmonize and analyze the data, add mapping layers, and optimize that data and mapping efforts on our preliminary locations, our routing, and project prioritization in this initial phase. Thank you, Rob, and I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Rob and Elizabeth, and just Rob for a sort of a demarcation point. That was the update on data and mapping efforts, and now you're going to transition over to the item on the agenda about the initial public comment process that's underway on the proposed locations in the middle mile, correct?
Yes, thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
So we have at the PUC already put out for public comment the locations for the middle mile network and put those out for public comment in a proceeding, and we will be getting comments back, and we'll be basically summarizing those comments and providing this list of locations to Department of Technology. We have a 90-day window to do that. In addition to the locations, we've also included a number of questions, including criteria for identifying locations and prioritization. And later on these slides, I'll show we have some links on how to become involved in that proceeding. We're also working in collaboration to provide the middle mile network locations. We'll be working with the third-party administrator once that is finalized. And we'll be updating those locations from time to time based on various criteria. And then CDT will be developing the middle mile network using the above information that we provide to them and in conjunction with the TPA, the third-party administrator. So we definitely want to hear from you. The August request for comment, we have a link here that I can send out after I'm finished. And the rulemaking, I'm sorry that this is a number. It's a little bit unwieldy, but this is how we work at the PUC. It is rulemaking 20-09001, and you can become a party to file comments on identification of existing infrastructure, priority areas, affordability of middle mile infrastructure, leasing, interconnection, network capacity, or other things. And the comments are due on the 27th of August. So that's next, not this Friday, but next Friday. And then reply comments are due September 7th. A second ruling is anticipated in the August-September timeframe, and we have some links on how to become a party to the proceeding or to provide general public comments, including comments online. And that's it for me. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Rob. Next, we are going to call on Miles Burnett to give an update on the status of the process to retain the third-party administrator.
Madam
Good
Chair.
afternoon. Sorry.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I just wonder if there are any questions for Mr. Adams. Some came up in the chat. I know you want to wait for those, but I just didn't know what order you wanted to answer those questions in.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll quickly make sure. I think Miles is the last one on this information briefing. Finish that, and then we're going to go open up for the committee, and then we'll go to the public.
Thank you.
And I will make it quick. So we are currently in negotiations with a third-party administrator that meets all of the requirements outlined in the statute. We're making significant progress. It's a big role. The third-party administrator will be involved in all facets of this project, from development, acquisition, construction, and operation and maintenance. So right now, to really kind of facilitate bringing a TPA on board so they can become part of the conversations with CDT, CPUC, and Caltrans, we're taking a phased approach, and we're really focusing right now on the first phase, which is the development phase. So we're hoping to have a TPA on board fairly quickly. And that's that.
Great, thanks for your update, Miles. Chair Tong, back to you if you want to facilitate a conversation about either questions from the members on any of the items discussed.
All right. Thank you for all of the updates. Let me go ahead and open up to the committee member first, if there's any questions or comments for what you just heard. Yes, go ahead and let's start. I think I saw a hand raise from Senator Gonzalez, and then we'll go to Assembly Member Cork-Silva.
Yeah, thank you very much. I too have a question similar to a question posted in the comment boxes to the 100 megabytes per second and below as the definition of unserved. I love that we're reaching for the stars, but just would like to know like what the reasoning is behind that.
Thank you, Senator Gonzalez. Yes, so as you may recall in the governor's executive order, there's the usage of 100 down as the threshold. So we use that definition for this analysis.
I see. It would be good though to see who is in the in-between, because that's really who is truly unserved on the 25-3. Because that gives a stark reality and picture of who is just has completely unreliable service. But I see what you're saying. So thank you, Commissioner.
All right, go ahead and Assemblymember Kortsova.
Yes, thank you. I have a question related to the mapping. Basically the question is, as you go about looking at where you're going to start some of these projects that are noted by the mapping, how will you work with, whether it's local government, school districts, other entities that could be very small? I mean, we're engaged here, but there's many small districts, small areas that might not even be having access to what we're talking about today, so that it would be made noted to them that there are these opportunities, so that we don't have areas that could be missed because they don't have as much access as an area that may be well informed.
I'll jump in real quickly and then refer to some of our partners here. I think that, there's a couple things. First, I think that our partners at PUC would like to hear about that, partially in the public comment period. I think secondarily, in the work streams that we've created, there's a communications and external affairs piece, and part of what we're going to be working on is really communicating that this project is underway. When the preliminary locations have layered over the feedback from public comment, and that there's been collaboration with the third-party administrator, PUC, and us on how we develop that prioritization, can take into consideration community readiness, but also identify where communities need help. And then there are separate but related efforts outside of the jurisdiction of the Middle Mile Network that are working on this. And Rob, do you want to speak a little bit about the CPUC's Technical Assistance Program?
Yes, thank you, Scott. So there's several other components that were included in the broadband budget addressing last mile. And as Scott indicated, there's a technical assistance component that will be very similar to the California Advanced Services Fund tribal technical assistance that we already have today. So the point of that really is to provide funding to localities to put together broadband plans, work with broadband planners, and kind of setting the stage for a broadband deployment in their community. On top of that, there's additional money available both from a federal fund that will be used to fund last mile builds, as well as a loan loss reserve account that will be used as sort of seed funding for localities. That would be cities or counties that want to raise funding through financing. So those are other tools that we'll have available. Finally, on the last mile, I think up until now, what we've done with CSF, it's been fairly passive. We've waited for providers to come to the PUC with applications. We're going to be taking a different approach now and going proactive and actually having people assigned to regions to work with those localities in helping them apply for money for technical assistance, for loan loss reserve, for federal accounts, so that we can actually work collaboratively to close the digital divide.
And I'll just make one last comment. I really do appreciate this, as we can't assume everybody has the information that we have access to. And I think an example would be in our housing and community development. We have many grant programs, loan programs, all types of access. But unless particularly underserved communities know about them and apply for them, they can be stuck. So putting on webinars so that people can start getting a head start on this before it's actually time to apply could make it much more robust, and we could get into those communities that we know are difficult to access some of this broadband.
No, You know, just as a follow-up to that, Assemblywoman, you know, thing to point out is that through the Broadband Council and the work of the Broadband Action Plan, you know, in the last couple of weeks, the Office of the Governor's Tribal Advisor had put together a California Tribal Broadband Connectivity Summit. And the whole purpose of that was identifying that there were some federal funding windows that were open, and that the you know, tribal areas, you know, needed potentially information about the deadlines and how to apply for those programs. So that webinar was put together. It was about 6 hours, and it walked through the federal programs with federal representatives, and then ended up with an application Q&A and walkthrough with the intention of helping those folks. And there's you know, similar efforts you know, in process for other specific entities, and GoBiz, the governor's economic development arm, is working on that as well.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go to Assemblymember Wood and then followed by Senator Mcguire.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to echo Senator Gonzalez's comment about the questioning about why the 100 megabytes per second or megabits per second. I guess one of my concerns is that I would like to see some more granular detail around what served and unserved looks like. There are huge swaths of my district, Senator Mcguire's district, that are really underserved. And what, you know, I'm going to speak as someone who is, we've got people been waiting for years and years and years for this opportunity, and would love to see a jump start on folks that have really never had any coverage at all, recognizing that some people have enjoyed coverage in some areas for years, may not be at a super premium level, but I don't want to see, once again, those folks who have never had any coverage be shortchanged, so that somebody who has coverage gets something better sooner. And so I recognize that some of our areas are harder to serve. And this isn't just necessarily rural. There are really unserved areas in some of our urban communities as well. And I would just like to see some of the more granular data, recognizing the governor's executive order. I would still like to see that more granular data, so we really understand who is really unserved and who is really underserved, rather than a global, you know, figure there. I'd like to see more detail. Thank you.
Staff, any response to that before we move to for acknowledgement?
Rob, I don't know if you want to say something. I did want to respond to a couple of things. First, we share the prioritization first and foremost. I think one thing that we can absolutely get more granular, that data is there. The thing to just remember is that unlike other types of infrastructure where theoretically the entire community is served in the same level, what we see and what we've learned is that there are certain blocks and certain parts of the community that may be at a certain level of speed, and many parts of the community may be, you know, 6 down, 1 up, other parts 23 or 25, and some may be just slightly above that. And so when we come at it from a perspective of how you would be coming at it, which is how do we ensure that we have sustainable infrastructure for the entire community, the 100 gives us that perspective. It's not to say we can't go more granular and maybe, you know, start a little to the east or to the west, but it's really important to take a different approach with the middle mile. Take an approach that's actually not going to inadvertently leave the most unserved behind, which is kind of the ironic problem that we've had with the construct that we've had with previous funding, is that it's actually created a problem where if one household in the community is above 25.3, then everybody else is left behind. So we're trying to not go down that same rabbit hole. But the data is very easy to share, but it's just wanting to step back and keep in mind to not get down this unnecessary bifurcation of communities within the community itself. And I think looking at the data might help actually take that in a little bit more. And particularly with certain types of infrastructure, we see that, what we've been calling redlining more so than in others. And so we want to make sure we don't inadvertently leave the most unserved communities behind because maybe a couple of households are meeting that threshold. Okay. And then if I could just say to Assemblywoman Silva, we absolutely agree with the importance of reaching out to local government. We've done it very much as part of the CSF program, and we hope that that program can be extended, as you know. And part of that program has significant funding for regional consortia and others to be able to engage and complement some of our outreach with on the ground work as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to go to Senator Mcguire first, unless Chief Deputy Miller, you have something that's, quick response to that. Oh, looked like your hand says off.
Oh, I did. I just wanted to, I feel like some of this confusion is on the, and I certainly, I think we'll defer to Senator Mcguire. I think some of the confusion is around how the legislation was written. And so we have two kind of conversations, and I just want to be really clear on what the legislation says and then what the goals are. Just to the commissioner, I completely agree. And I think it's really important that our data is complete because we are, of course, trying to build an entire infrastructure. But in terms of the actual language of the legislation, it does require the PUC when it makes its recommendations. And again, you remember that the PUC is engaged in a very quick public comment in order to get your responses back in order to make the recommendations for locations of the middle mile. And it specifically says then those recommendations will prioritize areas of the state that are unserved at 25.3. So we're having a little bit of two conversations in terms of the map that Mr. Osborne showed. And if we were to get more granular on that map, you would see that those little bubbles grow and shrink based on the speed. So I just don't want there to be any confusion here. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I just want that the language of the legislation is very specific, and that is kind of how you'll see the recommendations. But I don't want there to be any confusion as to, we are very aware of the long-term goals and needs at 100 megabits per second to the commissioner's point. So just two distinctions there that I think are important not to create any confusion.
Appreciate that clarification. And thank you, Senator Mcguire, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Going off of what Ms. Miller was just saying and it was very intentional in regards to this current legislation that was passed by the legislature, signed by the governor. Very specific to a worst first strategy. Worst first meaning unserved first, where folks don't even have access to internet, then moving to those who are underserved. And I think the other really significant piece of this is that, as the Commissioner Guzman Cevas just said, if we're using federal funds, for example, in the past, and one house in a census block is lit up, then that census block looks like it's served, and it's simply not true. And I think that's the other important piece of the legislation in this $6 billion that we're going to focus in on, ensuring that all get the service that they need and deserve. And candidly, we need to come to grips with, just like phone service and electricity, high-speed internet, to be able to achieve success in our modern society, need to be a right in this state. The other piece I'll say is that focusing on rural and underserved urban communities, we've intentionally embedded $50 million for technical assistance within the legislation. And I understand that this committee is looking at the implementation of what the legislation has advanced, but I think it's really important just to point out that we're very well aware that rural communities won't have potentially the resources to be able to do engineering or environmental, or candidly hire consulting to be able to form a joint powers authority with other rural communities to be able to establish, for example, a last mile broadband district. And this technical assistance funding would be able to help deploy those critical pieces of infrastructure or governance structures. The other piece I'll say is, in looking forward to hearing the input today, as I know all the other members of this esteemed committee are, we want to be focused on critical infrastructure and getting them served first as well. High schools, elementary schools, middle schools, community colleges, hospitals, federally qualified health centers, rural health centers, fire departments, police departments, sewer and water plants. That is where the focus has been thus far, but we really are looking forward to be able to hear from other folks about where their focus should be. Because let's just be honest, over the next 4 weeks, the Assembly, led by Assemblymember Wood and Ms. Quirk Silva, as well as Senator Gonzalez, and the Senate and Ms. Miller on behalf of the administration, we're going to need to be able to do additional cleanup legislation that we simply weren't able to hit by the previous deadline. And I think that's why it's really important to hear from the public. The last piece I'll say on this is to drive home the point for the worst first strategy. What we've said on last mile, a minimum of $1 billion of that $2 billion in change for the last mile has to be spent in rural communities. Again, the worst first strategy we must deploy, because there are literally hundreds of thousands of Californians that are just 3 hours away from the world's technology hub, Silicon Valley, that simply don't have access to even dial-up internet. And it's shameful in this state that is known for its innovation. I just bring those points forward because we look forward to hearing from folks about how we can improve the legislation today, but then two, that there has been a very keen focus on how to be able to get those folks who are most disadvantaged the service that they deserve and need to be able to thrive here in the years to come. And thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to comment.
Thank you for that, Senator Mcguire. Are there any feedback, comments from the committee? All right. I think that's a perfect segue to our public comment. Just a couple of housekeeping items. One is that for anybody who wanted to provide a public comment, please go ahead and put your name in the chat, and our moderator would call you out, and each of the public member would be given 2 minutes to provide public comment, and then follow, if there's a specific question, if appropriate, staff will address. Otherwise, we'll take that and circle back. And then the public comments area will be items that are on this agenda. The reason I want to specifically point out is if this is a public comment about the middle mile proceeding that CPUC is undergoing right now, they have a dedicated proceeding for that. So I just want to make sure that if it's related to that, that is the route to go instead of here. So having that said, let me take a look around the table. Michael, are you ready to go ahead and start with the public comment period?
Yes, I am. The first one is there a definition for community institutions? And that comes from earlier in the presentation.
Sorry, can you make sure, I don't know if we're all been tracking the chat. If you can go ahead and identify the individual or that individual.
I certainly can. Yeah, this is from Terry Loftus, and it was directed at everyone. And again, the question is there a definition for community institutions?
I'll hand it to staff, and I don't know if you want to address now or you want to circle back for that particular question.
So I would say that as it relates to this initiative, we do not have a specific definition for community institution, but in the statute, as part of the criteria, there is a reference to a number of different types of institutions that would be considered, in the process of, developing the locations for the middle mile. And that includes a number of entities or a number of institutions. And I'm going to call on Rob Osborne at PUC. Can you help me out with some of those, Rob?
Yeah, certainly, Scott. So typically we refer to community anchor institutions as K through 12 schools, libraries, universities, hospitals, fire stations, police stations, and I might be missing some that aren't coming to the top of my head at the moment, but we have those currently listed on the California Broadband Interactive Map. There's a layer called community anchor institutions, and that was our understanding, the working definition of community institutions.
Thank you, Rob.
All right, Michael, I just want to make sure we making sure that go ahead and if the individuals here have them announce themselves and make the public comment. Is not necessarily, we might not be able to get to a Q&A for each one of those. So I want to make sure we move swiftly on this.
Okay. Do you want to go direct into the people that want to comment but have not raised a question?
Correct, because I think there's
Okay.
a list of people that are item because it just there's so many things going
Okay.
on chat. Yeah.
Okay, the first one who'd like to provide a comment then is Preston Rea.
Yes, thank you. Hi, my name is Preston Ray. I'm a resident of San Francisco, and I've worked in telecom for over 10 years, including 6 years at a local ISP, Monkey Brains. To Senator Gonzalez's question about the middle mile network, it's necessary to have the 100 megabit symmetrical standard because it ensures that the speeds will be future-proof. The infrastructure laid here, which is most likely to be fiber optic cabling, will be easily upgradable without further infrastructure investments to even higher speeds in the future as new endpoint electronics become available. This is less true of infrastructure that is not capable of 100 speeds to all users, like cable, copper, and wireless. The presence of even one publicly owned fiber middle mile handoff in a county or a community opens up huge opportunities for ISPs to bring more affordable and more reliable connectivity to those communities in various ways. A lot of attention is justifiably paid to the rural communities who need the service, but even a couple of middle mile handoffs in urban areas like San Francisco, Sacramento, and Los Angeles will enable significant intervention by both competitive ISPs and local governments to provide service to households that the incumbent ISPs have failed to serve and who otherwise pay high prices for poor service. I applaud the Assembly and the Senate for passing this bill, and I urge the Commission to hold fast at 100 megabit standard wherever possible, as it is the only way to permanently ensure future-proof speeds for all Californians, beginning with those who suffer with poor or no connectivity today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And again, this is for comments. You're not looking for questions too, Amy, or are you looking for questions as well?
Yeah, let's go ahead and move through the public comments and
Okay.
People can make a statement. And if there are some particular question, we'll have the staff an opportunity at the end to make any final wrap-up comments if there are anything can be addressed, but it's a public comment.
Okay, I will do. The next comment, this one comes from Sarah Bashez from Cosbo. And the comment was, and I'll just read it out. She's asked me to read it out, is build a network expeditiously, leveraging and coordinating with existing infrastructure. It's important to coordinate to minimize the cost placed on school districts that are investing so much to meet the needs of their students and staff. As I said, she asked me to read that one out loud. The other comment was, this actually comes from Daniel Hughes. Danielle, did you want to make the comment out loud or do you want me to do that? I'll go ahead and do it. Unfortunately, this is from Daniel Hughes again. Unfortunately, I have to leave before public comment, but thank you. I want to thank the committee for considering diverse community needs. In the Lake Tahoe region, where we do have connectivity, we are seeing bandwidth issues due to visitor demand on the network. So timing those upload, download speeds is important to consider, with summer being the highest demand. Connectivity is critical for travel demand management tools, public safety, and communicating with the traveling public. I hope that the committee considers visitation in rural tourism areas and not just populations. Okay. And then I think it's Jorge Pacheco Jr. He is asked to make a public comment. Jorge, if you'd like to go.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Jorge Pacheco Jr. I'm a digital equity specialist and for a community health partnership here in Santa Clara County. I've been a teacher for the last 8 years. I taught last year, 4th grade during the pandemic, and I saw directly the impact that the digital divide had on students. When I saw that 50% of my students were making it to class on time, the kids of professors and engineers, and then the other 50% were not. The ones that lived in the apartment complexes next door were the ones that were children of Latino immigrants. And so what I want to see is a solution for all of that. And I'm really excited to see all of the amazing progress that all of you are making. I'm really excited to attend these meetings and to give public comment, and also emphasize the importance of creating public broadband infrastructure as a solution to close the digital divide, especially for communities that are oftentimes masked by tech companies' presence. For example, in Silicon Valley and Santa Clara County, there's still so much progress to be made. And so I really just wanted to introduce myself and also thank again the committee members for your service to our state. And I will be following everything really closely, and I look forward to getting to know everybody more. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, that's what I see. The rest are actually questions as opposed to comments.
Okay, so just in the interest of time, I think if there are a particular question and all that, I think the staff is trying the best they can to just address those in the chat. And I want to make sure that there's ample time given to folks who wanted to make a public comment. If there's no further request for public comments, we're going to go ahead and circle back with the committee member to see if they have any item they want to say before we close out the meeting today. Go ahead, Ms. Miller.
Thank you. I was just hoping that Commissioner Gonzalez or Rob could just specifically speak to the public comment. There have been a bunch of questions about that. I know you put it in the chat, Rob, but just in case someone's listening and can't see the chat, could you just maybe let folks specifically know? Because this is a proceeding, and I know that Ms. Gonzalez has already described that, but there's a lot of opportunity for comment and input here. So I just don't want there to be any confusion on who can and can't provide the comment. So if one of you could just let folks know how to participate, please.
Sure. I'll start off, Rob, you can fill in here. But yes, anyone can provide comments this proceeding. And I think, thank you, Rob, for putting in the timelines here. And this, there's two parts to this. One is that we're going to take initial comment, just like all the feedback that we got today was really important. There's two timelines. What we do is an initial comment, August 27th, and then people reply to the comments that everyone else saw. Maybe there was another comment that was raised that really spurred some thoughts, and you want to reply to those as well. So that's kind of our one iteration. And then we're going to update, provide an additional update and have a second round of comments. And we're going to then send a staff report to CDT. And Amy, I don't know if you guys or Scott want to talk about the public process that you'll use once it's over at CDT. But Rob, do you want to clarify anything that I misspoke on?
No, Commissioner, I think you have it. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you for that. Scott, I don't know if you want to add anything based on what Commissioner Guzman Services mentioned.
Yeah, well, the trigger is on the process of getting the information and recommendations from PUC, and then in collaboration with the TPA, going over those to determine prioritization. There's the public comment process on an ongoing basis has not currently been developed, and is something that we'll establish in concert with the third-party administrator when retained.
All right. I think there was also, again, I was just scrolling through the chat as I was trying to talk and scroll at the same time. That's dangerous. And I think there's a couple of questions from Alex. I don't know if your question is being addressed, or do you want just asked that, but that if that's more specific to a particular, proceeding, maybe CPUC can address that. I just couldn't tell clearly.
Yeah, if you just had a minute just to ask this question. So in SB 156 and Government Code Section 11549.54 subdivision D, there's a list of priorities 1 through 7. The number 6 is the one I have a question on. It's related to public safety answering points and technologies to assist in the prevention or response to natural disasters. Would that also include emergency services? There are many places in the state, rural areas, even urban areas, and more mountainous areas that kind of lack broadband services. And during emergency services, be it a fire, there's difficulty to communicate to the base. I know some places in the Los Angeles area have had that problem in the past. And so I'm just kind of wondering, does this definition also include emergency services? And if it doesn't, does this committee go about the process, should they do so, of trying to kind of broader define what that means?
Well, if I could, go ahead, Gail.
Oh, no, thank you. I think you're right, Mr. Alanis. It could have been clearer, but yes, it does include emergency services, including firefighting. It was meant to be specific to make sure that we have all of that infrastructure.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, I do want to recognize Director of Caltrans and Director Alvisaka, you just joined. Coming just the right time because I think we're nearing wrapping up. But you were well represented by your staff.
Thank you, Director Tong.
All right. I think there's, again, looking at this, I don't see any more public comment requests other than there's a request about a link to the middle mile gap. That link is not working, but sounds like that's something that CPUC may be able to address, making sure the right link is provided. If I'm reading that correctly. If I can just get an acknowledgement from CPUC that you guys are going to go ahead and address that, if that's what's referring to you.
Yes, Director Tong, I am working on that right now.
Okay, all right. All right, I think that looks like we have covered everything. Last chance for any public comments before we close that and revert the time back to the committee. Oh, Commissioner.
Thank you. I just wanted to, before we close, also mention that it's really would be fantastic for folks to really engage on this public process, not just for the middle mile, but this proceeding will also be the venue for the federal funding for the last mile. So as we undergo the public engagement on those rules and the engagement for how that program will be operated, this is going to be the venue for that as well. So just want to encourage you, if you can, to really subscribe to us on that proceeding.
All right, thank you for that. Seeing there's no additional requests for the public comment, let's go ahead and close that just a couple of minutes before we wrap. Reopening it up to the advisory committee to see if anybody have additional comments or questions before we wrap. Yes, go ahead, Director.
Director Tong, thank you again for your leadership on this inaugural meeting, if you will, pulling all of us together. I just want to comment on the fact that we're going to be as committed to this process as we possibly can be from Caltrans. It's going to take a team effort from CDT, PUC, our legislative leaders that are on. It's going to take all of our involvement to be able to serve and reach the people that we want to reach. Particularly want to commend, I heard a story from the teacher, Jorge. I think if I said your name correctly, thank you for that story and that comment. That's exactly why we're doing this work, is those students, the education needs that exist across the state, healthcare needs that exist across the state, We look forward to doing our part. This is not traditional work for us at Caltrans, but we're committed to delivering. It's a big part of what we do is we go out and deliver on infrastructure needs. So we're glad to be at the table, and we'll be partnering with all of you to ultimately get there. So thank you.
Thank you, Director, for that comment. I think that's a great way to wrap up our first meeting today, and on that high note. And once again, thank you for all of the members for joining, and also our members of the public for actively participating in this process. Really appreciate it. This meeting is on a monthly cadence. All the dates are at least preset, try to be preset on the website, so please check that out. And in terms of the agenda coming up, staff will be reaching out to the committee member to solicit agenda item as we move forward. Once again, thank you so much for joining, and have a great rest of the afternoon. Thank you, everyone.